Okay, so what we need to see today is something that was a little bit disturbing from yesterday. We had just started. Yeah. So the question that was raised was that a non-Jewish creditor lost the collateral, lost the gold watch. Okay. And I find it. And now my question is, what do I do with it? Do I give it to the Jew who had submitted it as collateral, or do I give it back to the non-Jewish creditor? So we know that the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda only applies to Jews, does not apply to non-Jews. So he says, "Aval b'she'ela hazot shehamashkon hu shel haYisrael ve'al smach hamashkon kibel haYisrael mehagoy halva'a." He says, in this scenario, the collateral belongs to a Jew. And it was only on that basis that the Jew was able to get a loan from the non-Jew. And now that the non-Jew has lost the collateral, if the finder will not return the collateral to the non-Jew, then the potential is at least that the non-Jew will lose out on his loan because he now doesn't have the collateral from which he can collect it. Nonetheless, surprisingly, shockingly, one does not return the gold watch to the creditor non-Jew, as the Shulchan Aruch says, Avedas ha'akum muteres shenemar avedas achicha. So the Shulchan Aruch paskins that when you find a lost object that belongs to a Gentile, you're allowed to keep it. As it says that the mitzvah only applies to that which is lost to your brother. Achazira rehu over avera mipnei shehu machzik yidei over avera. And if you return it to the Gentile, then you're actually doing an avera because you're helping sinners. So this makes a presumption. It makes a presumption that the Gentile that we're dealing with is a sinful Gentile. What if he's a righteous Gentile? So that argument doesn't even hold water. So you have to realize that we're dealing in a backdrop of when these halachos are written at a time of religious persecution against Jews. Vim hechazira lekadesh shem shemayim kadei sheyafaru es Yisrael v'yedu sheim bali amuna hareza meshubach. But then the Mechaber says, no. If, however, your objective in returning it to the Gentile is to sanctify God, so that people, when they think about Jews, will realize how good the Jewish people are, and that they are faithful and trustworthy people, so then that's praiseworthy. So on the one hand, he says returning it to a bad Gentile is a bad thing to do. But if you feel that you can have a positive influence on the Gentile, that by returning it to him, he and his neighbors and his friends and everybody will end up praising Jews as a result, then that's a good thing. Uvamakom sheyesh chilul Hashem, avedaso asura v'chayev lahachzira. And if it will create a chilul Hashem potentially, because the Gentile will know that he lost it in a Jewish area and the Jews have not come forward to return it, then not only is it a good thing to do to return it, but you're obligated to return it so as to avoid a chilul Hashem. So the Shulchan Aruch gives us three categories. Category number one, when there's no chilul Hashem at all, and he's a bad Gentile, because he's helping in aiding and abetting making Jews' lives miserable within society. So then you're not allowed to return it, because otherwise you'd be aiding and abetting a sinner. Category number two, if you feel you have the potential to make a Kiddush Hashem, so then you are permitted, and not only are you permitted to return it, but it is praiseworthy to return it. And category number three, if it'll create a chilul Hashem by not returning it, because the Gentile will certainly know that Jews found it and didn't return it, so then you're obligated to return it. Three different levels. No, you can't. Yes, you may, and it's even praiseworthy. and number three, you're obligated. So now that we've seen the psak of the Shulchan Aruch, let's take a look, go a little bit further. Amnam pasak hamaharam mirutenberg, shetzorach lahachzir et hamashkon liyisrael halove, v'lo yachzir oto lagoy. However, the Maharam Rutenberg, who lives again at a time of religious persecution, as we know, the story of his life, he was taken as the rabbi of his community and held for ransom because this was a way of extorting money from the Jewish community to take their rabbi. I think nowadays people would say, "We'll pay you. Keep the rabbi." But no, in those days. But he was held for ransom, and he actually forbade his community from ransoming him. So he ended up dying in jail. And it wasn't until decades later that they negotiated to get his remains back, and he got a final burial. Anyway, so looking at his historical backdrop, he paskined that you have to, in the case where you find a lost object, which is a mashkon, which is a collateral that belongs to a Jew but came from a non-Jew, fell from the possession of a non-Jew, so you have to return it to the Jew, and you should not give it to the goy. Kevan sheguf hamashkon hu shel halove v'lagoy lo hayalo alav ela shibud. His argumentation is this: the actual watch belongs to the Yisrael, belongs to the borrower, to the Jew. The Gentile only has rights of temporary possession, such that if the Jew does not pay back the loan, he can take possession of it. But it's not currently his. The kaven shenafel mimenu matza oso ha-Yisrael paka shibudo. Once the Gentile drops it and loses it, his shibud, the lien that he has on this object, flies away because he irresponsibly lost it. And therefore don't return it to the Gentile, because you're not allowed to return lost items to Gentiles. And even though the Shulchan Aruch says that you are permitted to return lost items to a Gentile when you can make a Kiddush Hashem, the mikrazeh ein lasos kein ki adam yachol lekadesh shem shemaim b'mamono ki ein lasos kein ki adam. I think the word is ein yachol lekadesh shem shemaim b'mamono al cheshbon. Oh, sorry. Ki adam yachol lekadesh shem shemaim b'mamono al cheshbono v'lo al cheshbon mishu acher. Because you can opt to make a Kiddush Hashem with your own money, but you can't opt to make a Kiddush Hashem with someone else's money. In other words, the watch belongs to the Jew. You want to make a Kiddush Hashem by returning it to the goy, that's very nice, but it's not your watch to do that, So therefore, it's not like I can say, oh, I'll make a Kiddush Hashem with your money. You can't do that. Al kain, and therefore, yitenam et hamashkon liyisrael, afal pisha ha-Yisrael marviach mizeh shelo yitzarech lahachzir lagoy et hachov, v'chein pasak maran b'shulchan aruch. And therefore, in this case, you're supposed to return the watch to the Yisrael, to the Jew, even though the Jew may benefit from this by not paying back the loan. And that's how the Shulchan Aruch paskins. Now, hold on a second. Doesn't the Jew still have an obligation to pay back the loan? Shouldn't the Jew, who's the owner of the watch, have both a halachic and a moral duty to give the watch back to the Gentile and say, I understand that you lost this, that someone found my watch because it has my name on it, engraved on the back, and returned it to me, but I want you to know that this is your collateral. Shouldn't he do that at least? Okay, so this is a bit problematic. So before we see any footnotes, let's continue. V'hosif sham maran es das Rabbeinu Yerucham, shehu hadin im adam Hilva kesef legoy the kibel mimenu mashkon. So the Shulchan Aruch also adds from Rabbeinu Yerucham that what? Let's say if a Jew lends money to a non-Jew, the opposite case. Here the Jew is the creditor, the goy is the debtor. The kibel mimenu mashkon, and and the Jew received collateral from the goy. V'hagoy ibedes hakesef umatza oto Yisrael acher. And as the Gentile left the place where he got the loan, the Jew's home where he got the loan, he lost the wad of cash, or he lost the bag of silver that he had just borrowed. Shetzarech lahachzer et hakesef l'malva. I find a bag of silver, and I just saw everything that transpired. Let's say, I saw it fall from the Gentile's wagon, the bag of silver. So who do I return the bag of silver to? The Jew has the collateral of the Gentile. Who do I return the silver to? You don't return it to the goy, you return it to the lender, to the Jew. Now, so that also seems to be unfair. Again, we're taking unfair advantage of a goy. And remember, we're speaking in the Middle Ages when there was a lot of animosity between Jews and non-Jews, and the non-Jews were persecuting the Jews. And this is part of the problem, is that we misapply sometimes some of these halachos that really were operative at a time when helping, aiding, and abetting Gentiles could actually be very, very detrimental to the Jewish community. All right, so let's continue. Ulam ledas harama, afal pishu hu maske mimaran bedin harishon begoy sheibir esamashkon shechayv hamotzi lachzer esamashkon liYisrael. The Rama now disagrees. The Rama agrees in the first case, where if the non-Jew is the lender and he loses the collateral, then I, the finder, should return it to the Jewish debtor. Keven shahamashkon hu shala Yisrael v'lagoy yeshrak shibud, the keven shehu ibed ezeh poka mimenu shibudo. So he says, for the reason that we mentioned above, because really it's the property of the Jew, and the Gentile only has a lien on it, and once he loses it, he loses the lien. And the Ramah goes so far as to say that if, instead of returning the gold watch to the Jewish borrower, you end up returning it to the non-Jewish lender, you actually have to compensate the Jew for the loss of his gold watch. Mikol makom, cholak almaran bedin hasheni. The goy shelava kesef mi Yisrael v'ibid hagoyes hakesef. But he disagrees with the Mechaber in the second case, where a Gentile borrows money from a Jew, and the Gentile loses the money, loses the cash. Sha'az ein hamotzei tzarach lahachzer et hakesef liYisrael, ela harei elu shelo kedin kol hamotzei avedas goy. And he ends up saying that don't give it to the Jewish lender. You don't have to give it to the Jewish lender. You don't have to give it to the goy. You can keep it for yourself because it's the lost item of a goy. Now, all of this is getting even more disturbing the more we get into this tshuva. Okay, let us continue. Uva Adam hamotzei metzia shel Yisrael mivutachat bebituach shel goyim. Now, let's say a person finds a lost item that belongs to Yisrael that was given over to, let's say, for this that was put in safekeeping under Gentile watching, I think is what it means. It was given over to the custody of a Gentile. I guess maybe like the Gentile has some kind of bank or safe deposit system. So in that kind of situation, if you find the lost item, Nira shechayev lahazira liba'aleha, kevin shebederach klal yesh hishtatfut atzmit shel Yisrael, uvazehu mechuyav lekayem mitzvahs hashavas haveda. And his argument is you have to return it to the Jewish owner because there's independent partnership of the Israel involved in this. So there's got to be something more to than this bituach. What is a bituach? I thought a bituach was maybe, let's see.
Security?
That's what I think. That's what I thought it meant. Insurance. It means an insurance company. Oh, so in other words, let's say you find a lost item that is covered under a Gentile insurance company. So that's what it means. A lot of times people will insure their valuable items. So a Jew loses something, but you happen to know that it's covered under Gentile insurance. So the question is this considered to be the possession of a Jew, or is it considered the possession of a Goy? Because at the end of the day, if I end up keeping it, the Jew will not lose any money because he could always report it that it was lost and collect on the insurance policy. So he says, in that situation, you have to still return it to the Jew. Because even when something is insured, there is still yesh hishtatfut atzmit shel Yisrael. He says because the Jew is still, there's going to be a deductible. It seems there's still some level of financial liability when a person, even when a person has insurance for a valuable. V'yesh lomar shegam ba'ofen she'en lo hishtatfut atzmit. And even when there's no personal liability, because let's say there's a zero deductible, but since the Jew will certainly have things that prevent him from collecting on the policy, and he's going to have pain and inconvenience collecting on the policy, that in itself is reason enough to return the lost item to the Jew. And the poskim also deliberate on the opposite case. What if I find a lost item that belongs to a Gentile that is covered under the insurance policy of a Jew, of a Jewish company? Do I have an obligation to save the Jewish insurance company money by returning the lost item to the Goy? All right, so in all of these cases, I would say not in all of the cases, but in some of these cases, we are dealing with a situation where the Goy is viewed as the enemy. And that's, I think, the problem at the end of the day with some of these issues. But let's try and untangle this and really figure out where we are. So in case number one that we've seen that is disturbing to us is that the Gentile loses the collateral, the gold watch that belonged to the Jew. There, the Shulchan Aruch paskins, you can't give it back to the Gentile, even though that you're causing the Gentile to lose money because he loses the security on the loan if you don't give it back to him. But because when he drops it, he loses the lien that he has on the watch. In other words, you only have a lien on something that you maintain possession of in halacha. If you lose it, then you've lost your lien on that item. At least if it's a chattel item. If it's real estate, obviously, then you maintain a lien on real estate because you're not going to be living on the real estate. But to maintain a lien on chattel, you have to have the chattel in your possession in order for that lien to be of any substance. Now, I'm not sure where that halacha comes from, because let's say I lend you money and the collateral is your cow. So does that mean that if I let you hold on to your cow, then I've lost my lien on it? That doesn't seem, I don't know where this halacha comes from. The cow is the security. It seems that I always thought you only have to hold on to the document. The document itself is sufficient. So I don't know where this halacha comes from, unless maybe this is a case where there's no documentation and that the whole loan is an oral loan. So that might make a difference. I don't know.
For documents, have to hold on. No, you lost your
If you lost it, you lost the security. Right, right. Okay. So I think your points are well taken. Let's take a look at the Makor Baruch at the annotator, and let's see what he says. He says, "Ayin beveis Yosef b'shem Chuvas Haram, shekosav demashet tzarich la'achzer es hamashkon liYisrael, hani mili kishahaya hamashkon shave yoser mechova." This is interesting. The Beis Yosef, who's also the author of the Shulchan Aruch, provides a very important caveat to this whole halacha. He says that the only time that you have an obligation to return the gold watch to the Jew, who's the debtor, right, the borrower, is only because the gold watch is worth more than the face value of the loan. So let's say the loan was for $1,000. The watch is worth $3,000. So the reason why you return the watch to the Jew is because the watch is worth more than the face value of the loan. And therefore, the watch really does not belong to the goy, because no one would would sell a gold watch for $1,000. Aval im huchlat hamashkon legoy kagon sha'ala hakeren v'haribis yoser me'shavyo zacha bo hagoy. If, however, the amount of the loan plus compounded interest is higher than the value of the watch, so then really the watch belongs to the goy. And so when the goy loses the watch, then it will be up to the finder to decide, is it usher, or is it mutter, or is it obligatory to return the watch based on those three levels that we saw in the Shulchan Aruch. And therefore, once it falls from the possession of the goy, the Jew who finds it technically gets to keep it. The kaven de dine de goy de basar arva azil v'nechsoi de inish inun arvin bay, the kol shekain b'mashkon shebiyado ad kan devarav. He says, because certainly that's the way the goy views it, that it's his watch and it's his possession, and therefore, when he loses it, he lost his watch. Behevio bisma. And the Sma quotes this, Vitama almar and lama hishmet din zemeh hashulchan aruch. And the Sma is astonished. Why didn't the Shulchan Aruch, when writing the codification, add that caveat that it all depends on the value of the watch vis-a-vis the amount of the loan? That if the watch is less than or equivalent to the amount of the loan, so then it really is the goy's watch, and you can either keep it or return it to the Gentile. Exactly. How's the finder going to know this? And because there's no way for him to know it, maybe he'll ask the Jew who borrowed the money, look, I found your gold watch. I know that you had given it as collateral to your friend the goy. How much is this watch worth? And he says, well, it's worth $3,000. And how much do you owe to the goy? I owe him $4,000 when you compound the interest. So, well, thank you for letting me know. Now I'll return it to the Gentile, or I'll keep it. Ba'ayin b'shach sheyishev shekiven demarin pasak b'shem yesh misha omer shafilu b'mamun mamash nafel mehagoy tzorach lahachziro liYisrael. And so the Shach suggests why the Shulchan Aruch didn't bring this from his earlier comment in the Beis Yosef. He says that the the Shulchan Aruch says that there is an opinion that even when actual cash falls from the hands of a goy, and you know that that cash was taken as a loan from a Yisrael or as security from a Yisrael, you have to give it back to the Yisrael. The imkain kol shekain b'mashkon afal pishu uchlat mikol makom tzarich lahachziro liyisrael v'ayin od betumen masherich bazeh b'dasmar. And therefore, the same would be true with the mashkan. In other words, it's a machlokas is essentially what the shach is answering. And but here again, you have a huge caveat in this halacha. Even according to those opinions that want to view the goy as the enemy, so to speak, but in a situation where the collateral is equivalent or less than the value of the amount of the loan, so then it is the goy's, according to at least one opinion. So it would be wrong then to return it to the Yisrael unless you just want it to be magnanimous and give him back his watch. There is such an opinion. There's such an opinion. So there's a machlokas. One opinion says that it was the goys, and the other opinion says it was the Jews. This is the machlokas. Okay. Right. So what we're seeing here is a distinction. When the collateral is equivalent in value to the amount of the loan or less than the value of the loan. So then at least when it comes to the, at least according to this opinion, it becomes the possession of the creditor, of the lender. When it's more than the value of the loan, it remains in the possession of the borrower. Not always, not always. Yes, in a perfect world, but let's say the borrower doesn't have. So there's a portion of the loan that is unsecured, and I have, sometimes I'll have Rahmanis on a guy, and I'll give him a loan, even though the amount that he gives me, or let's say, for example, let's say the loan is for $1,000, but with compounded interest, he's going to owe me $1,800. Okay, and the object is only worth $1,200. So a person may say to himself, "I'm willing to secure a loan for at least what's something that's over the value of the principal that I give him, and if I lose the interest, I'll lose the interest." Is that right?
Chattel mortgage is also the same.
But they have fish for us to settle. Right.
Rabbi mentioned before also that when you answer the question about collateral, usually the legal title remains in the borrower and just a lien on charge on the property. It's not full ownership of it, it's just a charge. So the legal title remains in the borrower.
Okay, let's just maybe finish this tomorrow. Okay. You want to learn tomorrow? I'm game. I'm going to go to the 645 million. So why don't we learn tomorrow? It's Good Friday. That has no bearing on our lives. Okay. What?
I didn't even know.
We'll make it a Good Friday. Okay, so we'll learn at 6:10. Okay, have a great day.